Hey, welcome to Project Recovery, a podcast about addiction. More importantly, it's about recovery. I'm Casey Scott. That's Dr. Matt Woolley. We're back in the saddle again.
Took a week off, and now we're back. It's good to be back.
I had to go for my other job.
Right.
We had to go to Austin for sales meetings.
Oh.
And
other job being
Old Republic Title.
There you go.
I'm a marketer.
Right.
And so basically what I do is I just connect the dots from escrow officers.
This is where you business people, man. You just start talking and you say stuff, and then later you realize it didn't mean anything.
You know what else it sounds like?
Dots.
Therapists. So, ooh, how did that taste?
Burn.
Huh? Ooh.
Burn.
So anyways, I've never been to Austin, and their
So you went there to connect the dots?
Yep, their slogan is "Keep Austin Weird."
Is it?
Like people describe Austin as like people that I knew in Utah that have been there before. It's kind of like the Park City of Texas.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It's known for its music. It's known for its kind of
they
culture.
They have the South by Southwest there,
and that was just
year,
kicking off.
right?
So we left on a Thursday. Austin City Limits.
Oh yeah, they have that too.
Was kicking off on Friday. And Pink, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and so the town was bustling.
I'd go for that. That'd be fun.
And it was cool. And there was a couple of things down there that I wanted to do. But before we get to that, these are some of the times that I don't get nervous for my sobriety, but I get cautious. Does that make sense?
Tell me more.
Okay, so have you've been on work meetings where they go out of town and it's like team building and do this?
No, never had a job like that.
So you do stuff like that.
I can imagine.
Yeah, and so basically the way the other people will sell it to you is, we're going to be in meetings for 8 hours, but then we're going to party.
Say, okay, yeah, I can see that.
You know, and that's the selling point.
That's what people look forward to.
They look forward to it. It's the network.
So they have it in a cool city with lots of cool bars, so you can party it afterwards. Yeah,
and they have this thing which Utah doesn't know anything about, but happy hour. Happy hours are everywhere.
Which you educated me on that not too long ago. I didn't realize they didn't have happy hour here because it's against the law.
It's against the law to have a happy hour.
Why do we live in a state where it's against the law to have happy hour?
Well, I was talking to a lot of people about the alcohol rules while I was in Austin from other people in different different states that were in the same company, and for the longest time, you used to have a private membership to all the bars in Salt Lake. In Utah, and they stopped right before the Olympics came. So if you wanted to go into a local bar, you had to buy a membership.
Oh, okay.
And then you could sponsor 5 people or something like that. But you would have a wallet full of memberships. Like if you went to 4 or 5 different bars, over the course of a month, you'd have to buy a membership.
I didn't realize that.
But they don't do that anymore.
Oh,
so they had happy hours, and it was kind of it was kind of cool. But I wasn't nervous for my sobriety. I was just cautious.
Okay.
Because that's one of the things of these sales meetings.
Well, what are you worried is going to happen? You're out there, everybody. So did they hit it hard? Did they hit the city pretty hard? Not throwing anybody under the bus,
didn't hit it really hard, but they did go out. And every night after the meetings, you'd go back to your room, you'd shower, you'd meet at happy hour. And part of that is the networking, is it's sitting there and talking to people rather than being in office meetings or conference rooms listening to a presentation.
It's a more relaxed setting. You can make real connections with people.
And so you're talking to people and talking about, what they do when they're out marketing and what are some of the tricks that they use and some of the things that they're coming across with the economy, what it is and how they're combating that. And so a lot of the conferences during the day was about that type of information. But in the evening, you got a chance to talk to other marketers and pick their brains. Okay. And all of that usually happens starting at happy hour.
Yeah.
And so then after happy hour, then they usually, let's go to get some dinner. Let's go into town. Let's go do something, because we've been in meetings all day. Let's cut loose and
have some fun.
I wanted to cut loose and have some fun, but I was kind of somewhat worried that was I going to be fun? Was I going to have fun?
Were you worried they would sort of think of you less than, like you're not as much fun? Or
so everybody in the company knows about my journey, about my road to recovery. And
but there were other companies there, right?
But
Like
they all
networking,
know.
People probably want to buy you drinks.
And people do that, and they try, and I go, no, I can't. And as a matter of fact, I always started out at these events like, hey, do you want me to buy you a drink? No, I'm an alcoholic. And 4 or 5 people will laugh, and I'll go, nah, I'm serious. Really am. It's like, if I drink now, then I won't make the plane on Thursday, but then they start to ask questions, and they get to know me, and we have fun. But I worry that I'm not going to be able to invite with them to go out and do fun stuff because they're worried about me.
Oh, I think when people get together and drink, they sometimes feel like it's a little bit of a downer to have somebody with them that's sober.
Yeah. But I went out and I went dancing and we went to a piano bar and we sang and we had a good time. And I kept to my plan. And my plan was when people started to get overserved or a little intoxicated, and it wasn't just the people that I work with, people at the bar, that's when I bounce out.
Okay.
You know what I mean? That's when I go like, so I was home by 10 o'clock every night.
I was going to say, that probably got you home pretty early.
Yeah, because I just go, and part of it is because I just...
Well, tell me why that's your plan, though.
I don't have the patience for drunkenness.
For the sloppy drunks?
For the sloppy drunks. I don't have the patience when somebody's telling me a story about what I should do or something like that, and I know they're inebriated, to act like I care.
Yeah. They're sharing their genius plan with you.
Yeah, and not
like,
to be cold or callous, but it's just like...
We've all been there.
It's just like, you're not going to remember this. I got to act like I care, and none of this sounds fun for me. So I want to come down here, I want to get to know you, and I want to have some fun.
Yeah.
But once the Jaeger comes out, I'm out.
For sure. Once the Jaeger comes out, you definitely need to go.
You know, and so, but it was very fun for me. And the crazy thing is that during that time, I met at least a half a dozen people in the company, or would find out that I wasn't drinking after I told them that I was an alcoholic, that would sit down and I would have genuine conversations with them because they had a family member or a loved one, or they were thinking about they drink too much. And so it really was enlightening to own it.
Do you attract people to you when they find out you're sober that want to discuss like that worry that they drink too much? Do you get that a lot?
A
lot.
lot.
I bet you do.
But on the other side, I get people who avoid me.
Oh, yeah.
Avoid me.
Yep.
They're like, we're at a party, and that guy comes in who's like, oh, this guy's a lot of fun. You're going to love this guy. And then they go, and this is our friend Casey, who's an alcoholic and in recovery. And they're like, so we don't ever really cross paths because he does whatever he can to stay away from me.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of people, and they would use the term that you use, pre-contemplation.
Yeah.
That would be like, hey, how did you do it? And I get this a lot. Is it really fun? Are you really happy?
I think people definitely worry that if they get sober and they don't have alcohol in their life anymore, life is going to be really boring.
And I know that's 100% true because I thought that. Yeah. I thought to myself, how am I going to have fun in this world without alcohol?
Yeah.
And that used to scare me. And now I go, what were you thinking? If all your fun had to revolve around alcohol, were you really having fun?
Right. Now, you were that sloppy guy telling people your plans.
Yeah. But my plans were good.
I'm sure they were. I'm sure they were genius.
My plans were going to work. So, once again, I think a big key to my recovery has been the ownership. Just go, no, this is it.
Well, so I like that because, if I understand what you're saying, when somebody offers you a drink, you say, no, I'm not going to drink. I'm an alcoholic. Instead of just saying no, thank you, or being vague about it. Is that right? You just kind of jump straight to the...
I just jump right to it because then I don't have to... I saw this meme and it says, alcohol is the only drug you have to explain to people why you're not using it.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like somebody goes like, hey, do you want a drink? And you're like, no. And they go, why? No should suffice, but you have to go, no, I can't. Or you got to go into some long story of why you're not drinking that night.
Right.
When no should just be enough. And so rather to save me the time, I go, I'm an alcoholic.
Yeah, end a conversation right there.
And then if they want to have a conversation about why it is, I'm the king of, hey, Google my name.
Yeah. You see my mugshot.
Yeah, So I look like Nick Nolte's little brother.
You do, really. What about this? What about, so you're at this big conference, lots of people from all over. Did you meet anyone else that's in recovery? Did anybody come up and say they're an alcoholic too?
No, I didn't.
Really? Oh, that's surprising.
I met some people who didn't drink, but once again, I think there was over 150 of us there.
Yeah.
And so the people that I interact with, that circle was maybe 20 or 30.
Yeah.
But I got a lot of people who was like, wow, you're a lot of fun. And I was like, well, cool, thanks.
With a little surprise in their voice, right? Because they assume that if you're not drinking, you're not going to be any fun.
Like I was out there dancing with people and I was singing at the bar. And this one lady who's a marketer here in Salt Lake, she goes, I just want to tell you how proud I am of you. And I go, why? And she goes, because you're genuinely having fun. You're not faking this. And I go, no, why would I fake this? If I'm not having fun, I'm just going to go home.
Yeah.
You know, you go home, and any given time, Law and Order's on, and I like Law and Order.
Well, there you go.
I'll go back and just watch that, but I was genuinely having fun.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about it was, because I've been in conferences in the past when I was drinking, and I guarantee I didn't learn anything. And you know what I mean? And I was the guy.
Sure.
I was the guy who slept through the alarm.
Yeah.
Who would fall asleep during presentations.
Right.
And I came home with a notebook full of notes.
No, I'm sure you benefited.
And it
Let's
was cool.
bring up something, though, because your personality, with or without alcohol, you're a fun guy. You're outgoing. You like to have fun. The truth is there are people, especially I work a lot with people who have anxiety, that they are introverted and they are anxious. And so in those social settings without alcohol, it's more of a legitimate concern to them that they aren't going to be able to interact and have fun. So what advice would you give to those folks? Because there are people out there that have used alcohol most of their life to compensate for their social anxiety.
I mean, I guess, and we learned this in the conference, and I think it applies to recovery as well, is stay in your lane, know your strengths and know your weaknesses. And so if you are a more introverted person, be cognizant of the situations you put yourself in, and be realistic with your expectations. You know,
Sounds like therapeutic acceptance of accepting yourself for who you are and sort of, playing to your strengths, right?
I'd like to be taller and I'd like to be thinner, but this is who I am, and I got to be okay with it.
Right.
And there's just some things that are out of my control.
Yeah. You got the flow, though.
I know.
Behind the hat.
But here, short story sidebar, if you will.
Yeah.
I was taking my son to the doctor for his annual checkup.
Right.
And they did his measurements and his weight, and then they were going to do his height. And so they did his height. And he goes, "Hey, Dad, why don't you jump on there?" And I go, "Why?" He goes, "Because you say you're 5'11", but I don't think you're 5'11".
So what was the verdict?
5'9.5".
Yeah.
But I'm rounding up to 5'10".
Yeah. My
weight.
football coach in high school used to add 2 inches to all of us, and I still go by that.
Oh, yeah. You did that for the programs.
Yeah.
So the other team thought you were bigger.
Look bigger, yeah.
Yeah, and that's where I got the 5'11".
Yes.
That's where I got it.
Yeah, from football, right?
But I still have the same weight as that program says, and that's lying too.
Yeah, for sure. I'm with you on that.
So I think it was fun for me, and it was good to get out and still see if I got it, if you will. You know what I mean? To go out there and have a good time. Because so far, I've only played in my own backyard, and I feel pretty comfortable around here.
Right.
And the other part about it is being who I am with being on TV and this podcast. I'm in the public eye quite a bit. Mm-hmm. So there's a safety net, if you will.
Well, how so? What do you mean? Because that's what you do.
Because that's what I do, and my brand is that I'm the guy in recovery.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I see what you're saying.
go out to Austin. Nobody knows me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so
you had to sort of be yourself in a fresh new way.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I get that.
And it was cool. And so,
but a lot of people who are in recovery might think, "Oh, I'm going to go to a place where people don't know me. Maybe I could get away with having a drink."
I think people do that all the time.
Right? That anonymity of being out of town. I think we've talked to a lot of people who that kind of fueled their addiction and caused a lot of relapses because they had jobs where they traveled.
Well, and they lived dual lives.
Right.
So where they came home, they were prim and proper. They were hitting church on Sunday, and they were doing that. Whenever they were on sales jobs in out-of-state
They're
markets,
partying.
they were tearing it up.
Right.
And so they lived these dual lives.
Did you ever have that thought this weekend? Last week? No.
No. Because, and I was talking to our guests, and we'll introduce them here in a second. Because in my life, and I've told you this before, there is nothing in a glass of alcohol that will make my life better. There is nothing in there.
That's good insight.
And for me, to have one was never my jam. And so why would I have one? And I don't want to drink again. And so to me, it brings no value to my life, and nothing but pain would come from it. And I don't want that.
Good for you, man. That's awesome.
Well, we got a great show for you today, and we've got an old friend returning.
I feel like he's a record setter.
Well, he's
a champion.
Yeah, he's got the most swears on a podcast.
Yes, the most.
I think it's 32.
Josh had to work hard.
Yeah, and this is when he said right before we started recording, "Hey, can I swear on this podcast?" We said we'd prefer you not, and he goes, "Okay, won't be a problem," and then proceeded to swear.
Set the record, even more than Brandon Novak.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, and he was in Jackass and a skater.
I know.
This guy's Is he a prophet or what was he? Your uncle?
The family is Smith, for heaven's sakes. Last name is Smith. The family is intimately.
I'm glad you said for heaven's sake.
For heaven's sake, the family is in the hierarchy of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints history. Yes.
And so I call Christian from time to time because he works at Wasatch Recovery, and I go, "Hey, I'm looking for a guest because you're close to the recovery community and you hear amazing stories every day." And I said, "Hey, do you got anybody that would be great for the podcast?" You threw out about 3 names, and I told you what?
Yeah, already had them.
Yep, we've had them on the podcast. They've told their story. They were wonderful. And then you said, "Give me 10 minutes, and I'll get you a guest." I said, "Cool." So we hung up the phone. He texted me back and said, "I got a guest." And so I called him because I'm that kind of guy.
I know. We've talked about this.
Yeah. So I called him.
I get nervous texting you because I know I'm going to get a phone call back.
Yeah, because I hate texting.
Yeah.
And so I called him and I go, "Christian, who do you got for us?" And you said what?
I said I got this gal whose dad is recovering from drugs and alcohol, crack cocaine. I think I said specifically, the guy's an alcoholic, crack cocaine recovering guy.
And I said, "Do I know her dad?"
And I said, "Yeah, it's me."
So it's your daughter.
Yeah.
So spin the mic over. Her name is Sara Archuleta.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
So we're going to hear your story about living with a crackhead alcoholic dad.
Sure are.
We can't wait.
And we're going to find out what she does now, which is pretty cool.
You're listening to Project Recovery. Hey, welcome back to Project Recovery. I'm Casey Scott. That's Dr. Matt Woolley. He's a clinical psychologist, and our guest today is Sara Archuleta, or we could just say Christian Smith's daughter. So where does the story of your dad's addiction and your life begin?
Oh. Well, I was born into his addiction. The first time I saw him sober was when I was 16, and I turned 30 this year. So vast majority of my life was affected by his addiction.
That's the vast majority of your sort of developmental years, right?
Oh, yeah.
All those years of, developing yourself were with a dad who struggled with addiction. What did that look like as a kid? Do you remember?
He was there physically, but wasn't there mentally. He coached my soccer. He coached my basketball games. He was there. It just was not what now I know as a normal dad.
Every once in a while, we'll have people on the podcast, and I think I was guilty of that with my kids as well, is do we have happy dad or do we got grumpy dad? Mm-hmm. And so my kids would gauge their behavior on what kind of drunk I was that day, if you will. It'd be like, Dad's happy, and so we're going to do some fun stuff, or Dad's hungover, and so we're going to let him sleep on the couch.
I think it's also, like you were saying, Sara, that it's are you present, right? Like we've talked about that before. Even if you're happy drunk dad, are you really present? Are you really tuned in? And I think kids, like once you had a dad who was sober, you could probably realize, oh, that's what it feels like to really have a connection with my dad. Does that
100%,
resonate?
100%. He would have his eyes rolling into the back of his head as he was in the kitchen cooking. And I would go over to a friend's house and be like, "Your dad doesn't do that? That's weird." Right? There are a lot of
because you only know what you know.
Yeah. I was born into it. From day one, from the day I was born, he was in active addiction. And a lot of it was my perception of normal. I didn't know any different.
Can I ask you, did your siblings or your mom ever try to rationalize it or explain it to you in terms that made sense to you?
Not really. My mom did the best she could to protect us from it, and in doing so, it was more of like the ignorance is bliss mentality. A lot of the times when people would ask us where dad is, mom would say, "Oh, he's at a business trip," or "He's not feeling well. He's at home laying down." Meanwhile, he's on a bender. He's in Wendover doing whatever he does out there for days on end. There came a time probably closer to the end of the addiction, right, where it was like, okay, there is a problem here. But it never was like dad is an alcoholic and then he's an addict. It was dad's sick. So it did take us into his recovery part before we started gathering those aspects of it.
Now, when you talked about going over to your friend's house and their dad's eyes weren't rolling in the back of their head.
Yeah.
And you said that's not normal.
Yeah.
When did you realize that your family or your childhood was not normal?
I didn't really. Like, to be completely honest, I had a great childhood. My parents, people being a clinician in the field, everyone's like, how did you not have trauma? I really would say I did not have much trauma in my adolescence. Childhood was great. I was very active in my cousins' lives. I had aunts and uncles that we were very intertwined with things. We would be weekend sleepovers at aunt and uncles' houses. I really wouldn't say that I didn't have a out of the normal childhood. I honestly I did not know any better. And when I would go to those friends' houses and I would kind of look at like, that's weird. Like your dad's, that's weird. I'd never really vocalized it. I never said, what's your dad doing, right? I didn't want to bring that attention onto things because we were talking about the latest boys we liked, or we were talking about school or whatever. It wasn't the topic of conversation, really.
I was looking at you for something, but
I was just listening to the story.
I mean, because it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Because you didn't know any different.
Growing up, so I remember I'm one of 4, and I'm a middle child. So my 2 older brothers definitely were more affected in the aspect that they were older as he was getting more deep in the addiction. And I was kind of coming into the catalyst of more of it at the time. So growing up, in elementary school, he would come and check me out of school to fake broken bones. And we would go down to the Instacare and they would give him narcotics. They would give him.
Whoa! Hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Yep.
So your dad would come and check you out of school, and you would fake broken bones so you could get narcotics. How do you fake broken bones?
I'm what they call fragile. I in my lifetime have broken a lot of bones.
Really?
Lots.
Okay.
Probably 12 or 13.
Like,
And
real
bones.
Do you have a disorder?
No.
Like you don't drink milk? Like
I
what's
don't
going
drink
on?
milk. Yeah.
Okay.
I wouldn't say I'm lactose intolerant, but I do not like dairy products.
That actually is a myth. But like, are you accident prone?
Yes.
Like, okay.
My mom says that every year in grade school, I started the year and ended the year in casts.
Wow.
So
Okay.
he would time it just right where either you could still see the hairline fracture on the x-rays. I mean, they catered to him. He's a
capitalized on your
master
clumsiness.
manipulator. Yeah, 100%.
And
Wow.
I got to ask, you thought that was normal?
I thought it was him and I bonding. Yeah.
It was dad time.
It was dad and I got checked out of school. The
I'm
one
sorry,
place
I
he
don't
didn't
know
want to
why
be.
I think that's so
No, it's totally
funny.
It is very comical now, right? There is a formula for humor, right? When it comes to this, it's time plus crisis, and we've definitely had enough time, and we've been through the crisis itself that we can look back and kind of find the humor in all of it. But yeah, I thought it was him and I bonding. I thought it was him and I getting we had our secrets. This was something that kept us closer together because he's my best friend. And throughout his addiction, he was still my best friend. So yeah, but the biggest thing is I would get back to school and then he would say, remember, don't tell mom, this is between you and I. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, yay, I get another secret with dad.
So it felt like, I mean, let's be honest, it was bonding in a way. It's also kind of manipulative bonding, right? It's not necessarily healthy bonding, and it teaches you some pretty unhealthy things about close relationships. But for a little kid, anytime you get to spend one-on-one time with your dad, I think we all probably cherish those memories. Yours just happened to be at Instacare.
I mean, every once in a while, I'd let my son, when he was 7, pound a Mountain Dew. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'd be like, hey, don't tell mom.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a bonding thing we did.
Sure.
And I mean, in a lot worse, but that's kind of what was going on.
And it continued as I was getting older. I would go and babysit my aunts and uncles' kids, and it would get to the point where he would call me and say, I'm not feeling too well. Can you go to the medicine cabinet and read to me the medications? So I would go over because it sounded legit, right? He's really good at playing the story. And I would read the prescriptions off to him. And if it was what he wanted, he'd be like, okay, I'll be there in just a few minutes. And I would walk them out to him, give them to him. And then again, hey, thanks. Remember, like, let's keep this between you and I. Okay, right? And sometimes it got to a point where he didn't even have to say, let's keep it between you and I. I just started keeping it between him and I.
But at some point, you had to wonder, this isn't right? Or did you not?
I really didn't. I really didn't. Because again, I truthfully did not know any better. And at what point did I tell my dad, like, no, right? That's, as you know, growing up, that was disobedient. You don't tell him no.
And it's your dad. He wouldn't
Yep.
be putting you in harm or doing anything.
And let's be honest, your dad, he's a charismatic, fun guy.
Yeah.
And do you feel like he was always that way when you were a kid?
He was, I mean, always. He was the guy that was the entertainer. He was the one that made everyone smile and laugh and always had that good affect and good time with everyone, even when he was high as a kite. 100%.
Yeah.
He was always that very outgoing person that would go and, he would talk to a wall if it would talk back. Sober and in addiction, 100%.
Yeah.
Sarah, I'm going to stop you right there, and I'm going to swing the mic over because your dad's here listening. When you hear your daughter talk about this, what does that feel like for you?
We have had the opportunity to share our story quite a bit. And I do believe in that crisis plus times equals humor. So we're able to laugh a lot of it. But to your direct question, you can see it, the emotions right now a little bit. It stings. That's not what I wanted to be. And I didn't want her to go through those things. She didn't even mention during that same time there was another thing that they still harbor against me, even 13 years into recovery.
I was getting there.
Okay, I'll let her get to there when she gets to that. But there's some sting there still. I don't know, Dr.
No,
Matt.
I feel this thing too because we've got some time and some crisis in my story as well. But every once in a while, something will come up and it'll hit me different.
What I see going on here, Sarah, and you correct me if I'm wrong,
Sure.
is that because you guys have been so open and honest, you've been through the process, and you've had the time, that there's forgiveness on your end. But I also see for Dad, there'll probably always be an element of shame and regret. And I think that's a healthy thing. I think shame, it's borderline if that can ever be really very healthy. But when in moments you think about the fact that you're like, gosh, I wish I had never done whatever it is, and I'm sure we all have that experience, that can kind of motivate you to stay on a good path. But I think that you guys are close because of the process and the forgiveness, and to some degree because Dad really does regret that, because I can tell that, like you said, he's your best friend. There's a lot of love between the two of you. But I can imagine that that'll probably always be kind of hard, right, Christian, to hear that?
Yeah. I think that over the years, the sting has dissipated a little bit, but I can't ignore it to your question, because it's always, when we get talking about this, there's always a little tiny sting there.
But I think the sting is helpful in the sense that it reminds you of where you do not want to go anymore. And for me, you know what I mean, that sting is enough. The look in my child's eye is to know that I do not want to see that look again. So the remembrance of that sting is a great motivator and a reason why I continue to stay sober. I know you can't get sober for somebody else, but the fact that you stay sober for somebody is important.
Yeah. I agree with that. Not only with her and her siblings, but now they all have children. And there are times when I can consciously recall those grandkids will never see their gramps loaded, because that will never happen. I'm not going to put them through that. And I get to be at this place of honesty with those grandkids, not always in their favor. Like, that's stupid. What were you thinking when you did that sort of stuff? I never would have done that back in the day when I was drinking and drugging. And it's a good place.
So, Sarah, you and your dad shared these little secrets.
Yeah.
And
They definitely, they just continued. He always had this logic, and it was very skewed, but it was that he wasn't hurting me or my sister or any of our siblings. He was simply inconveniencing us. And it came down to it when we would get an allowance. He would give us an allowance every week, put it in my wallet. I would go to the mall with girlfriends, go to open my wallet, and there would not be money in there. It would be a piece of paper that's an IOU.
Those were as good as cash.
Yep.
They still are.
They still didn't pay for my earrings, right? But those, and those are the things that he was referring to. We do still have those to this day. It's IOU, whatever, and we have them. Yeah. And those kept going on, and that became more of the embarrassment part. And this is probably now 6th, 7th grade-ish era, where this kind of started picking things up, and that's where things started trickling for me. Because I still love him. I always have loved him. There were days that things were more difficult as he progressed and got deeper into the hole of addiction. But I really don't think there was a time where I was like, no, that's not true. I did wish you dead, right? There was a time where I did wish him dead because I guess I'll back up a little bit. I've kind of like skipped ahead. But so the IOUs came out, and then you started going on longer benders to the point where I would be coming home from school and my mom would have filled black trash bags full of his stuff and then tell us to go pack a bag, and we would go and stay at my grandmother's house for a few weekends on end. And then that, as we were kind of being bounced around, moving from grandparents to aunts and uncles' house, we had relatives living in the state of Washington and California, so we were going back and forth between all of this in the summer. I don't really ever think we were home for a summer when he was in his addiction because my mom was still working full-time, but there was this safety net of she didn't want us to be home alone knowing that he was out running and gunning.
So on that note, the evolution of addiction, at least my addiction, was it started out manageable, functioning, and over a period of time, I required more, and the functionability decreased until you couldn't count on me. I was not physically a danger to them, but emotionally, there was no emotional support. And the time you just described there a little bit was probably about the time I started out with opiates, with pain pills, added alcohol on that, and gambling and pornography and all that. But the time you just spoke about where it was kind of dangerous was I had now been introduced and was loving the effects of crack cocaine. And that really took everything to a whole new ball game. Is that fair?
Yeah. No, that's about it. Yeah.
And so your mom, who was working full-time, managed to keep the home up and running, but she wanted to make sure you guys had a summer, so she would cart you off to family members.
Yep.
So you could have a fun summer and maybe guise it in the way, hey, we're going to go here for the summer and you're going to do all kinds of cool stuff, hang with your cousins.
Yep. Yeah.
Do you think your mom was worried about safety or the effects of your dad's behavior on you guys?
100%. Because again, growing up, I never saw him physical, right? I never saw him hitting anyone, never saw that there was abuse of any kind. There were these moments where I did now see what I now know as withdrawals, right? Where he would go downstairs, he was isolating, he would have these spurts of anger come out. And so, yes, there was that moment where it's like, okay, mom's got to jump in and do something to protect us. So that was, let's go sleep over at an aunt's house. Let's go sleep over at an uncle's house. And summers in Washington were fun. They were great. They were eventful. Summer in California was awesome and great. I mean, again, I had all of these experiences that any other adolescent would have when it came to those extracurricular activities and whatnot.
As you got older, though, I'm gathering your personality here is pretty optimistic, pretty
like
positive. Yeah, a lot like her dad. But as you get to be an adolescent, you were mentioning like 6th, 7th, 8th grade, it really started to ramp up. Going away for the summer sometimes ticks kids off that age because they want to be with their friends. They don't want to have to leave. They don't want to leave their room and all of that. Was that your experience, or were you just ready to go?
No, my more experience at the time is my siblings are my best friends. My cousins are my best friends.
Okay.
Because we were all so enmeshed together. We're all about the same age. My sister is 18 months apart from me. I mean, yes, we felt like, typical sisters and whatnot, but she then was my best friend and is my best friend now. And so going to these places, I was more excited. Like, yeah, I get to go out of state for the summer. I get to go to the beach all summer, right? Or I get to go live on a farm all summer. It was kind of those distinct things that made it unique.
So your friends, your cousins and siblings went with you. Okay,
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
But as you stated, the benders became longer.
Yeah, benders became longer. I am starting to now pick up on things because Dad is more
Erratic?
more away, and his behavior's all over the place. to the point where I called my mom one night and she's panting, running around because he's trying to break into the house and he was high as a kite and she was scared for her safety. We weren't there at the time. Again, we spent a lot of time with aunts and uncles. And again, we knew he was running and gunning, so she was trying to protect us by not having us home. And as that happened, that was probably the first time that I realized, wow, this guy is an idiot. Like, I really do not like him. And I think that was when my love started to turn for hate. It was very quick, but it wasn't in the way that I hate him. I started to hate my mom for keeping us away. Like, if we were with my dad, maybe my dad wouldn't be this way.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I really was despising my mom. I had a lot of negative feelings towards my mom, not towards him.
I think that makes a lot of sense in an adolescent mind because you have this bonded relationship with your dad, albeit it's a little bit, dysfunctional, the bond.
Yeah.
But you probably did think like, hey, I'm special to my dad. If I'm there, if we're all there, maybe that'll make a difference. I could see that.
Yeah. So he goes away, and then my mom, it still is hush-hush. We're not in this position of opening up to the world about what's going on inside of our house. It was kind of like the phrase for as far as people know, we're a nice, normal family, right?
But do you think as far as people knew, you were a nice, normal family?
No, we didn't hide it as well as we thought we could, for
We never
sure.
do.
There were people that would come up to us and be like, especially at church, like, where's your dad today? And I'm like, oh, he's on a business trip. And they just got the smile on their face like, okay.
The business trip was Davis County Jail. For a year and a half.
But we didn't know you were in jail, right? That was
At that beginning.
Yeah, at the very beginning of his sentence, we did not know where he was. We were just told, like, he's gone.
And how long was the sentence?
18 months. So
At some point, you got to realize this is not
Yeah.
the world's longest business trip.
Yep. So his parents were serving, and my grandparents were serving an LDS mission in Greece. And we went to the airport to welcome him home. And my aunt, his sister, said, well, have you seen your dad? And I'm like, no, I don't know where he's at. No one knows where he's at. And my mom's over there like, shh, we're gonna go do that. So my mom was surprising us. I'm learning to see that my mom's idea of surprises are not a typical surprise. But we were surprised, and we went to, he started out at Salt Lake County Jail. That was my first time ever going to the jail was Salt Lake County. And that long ramp, kind of walking up to it. And my sister and I we were young, had no idea what we were prepping ourselves for. And we walk in there, and it's different demographic than we've ever been used to. And we just kind of were looking around. Okay.
Did you know why you were there, or is this part of the surprise?
We were driving, said this is where Dad's at.
Oh.
So
But she didn't explain it's a jail?
No.
Oh, okay.
Nope, not till we get there, and we started, like, putting everything together, and we're like, oh, okay, like, Salt Lake County Jail. This is where we're at. And I just will never forget it. Salt Lake County, it's like you pick up the phone, talk to him type of thing or whatever through the glass. And I think you had your head shaved. You did not. It was not a good look for you, and you just had your elephant ears. But that was the first time that I had seen him, and it was just like all those happy, feel-good emotions came to the point where, like, then overcompensated from the hate to, oh, I miss you, I love you, I'm not mad at you anymore, like, I'm happy to see you. And we never missed a visit from that point, even when he got transferred up to Davis County. And as at this point, I think I'm 7th grade. I have a favorite jail to visit. I liked Davis County over Salt Lake County. The guards were nicer to us because there were times where
we're pretty nice up in Davis County.
Yeah. The guards weren't as mean, I feel like, as Salt Lake County. There were times where my sister and we didn't want to miss a visit with Dad, but my mom couldn't always take us. And my brothers, who are very angry with him, very resentful of him, we would beg them to have us, to take us, and they would. And the guards were picking up on the family dynamic of these guys don't like him and these girls do. So they would kind of give us an opportunity to have that, even though we were minors and we were supposed to be accompanied by a parent or guardian. So never missed a visit. And it was I remember the day you got out, you came to surprise me at school with my sister, and you came and got us, and we went to lunch, and everyone's wondering like why I'm greeting my dad so big with hugs. Like, it's not like I didn't see him that morning, because again, I still wasn't in a position, and our family wasn't in a position to say anything. I mean, this was...
When you say in a position, is it fair to... Shame? Is this all
Yeah.
shame? Yeah.
Because addiction and all the mental health was it is stigmatized, but then it was more stigmatized than it is now, right? Because you look at an addict, you don't see our family fitting that characteristics by then, right? And also, people didn't really understand. I didn't understand what addiction was. I was like, just stop, right? It's just stop. But when he got back, he was present. He came back and things were going really well, and then they weren't, right?
Relapse.
Yeah. Yes. And I don't remember the length between when he got out of jail and the relapse taking place. I feel like it was a slow relapse before it went to a full-blown.
My memory is it was less than 45 days.
Yeah.
When Mom said, this ain't working again, get out.
Yeah, because I think in those 45 days, I'm pretty sure didn't Adam get married? Weren't you sober for the wedding? Yeah. So oldest brother got married. All of these big changes were happening in the family. Then you go on a bender, and this was the bender that my hate came back, right? And
Is this when you stole your son's money for the car?
No, that had happened. That's another story, but that had happened before. But
Yeah.
I don't do well with cars. Continue on, Sarah.
Yeah, this is where my little story with the car comes in, right? So 45 days, he came home, relapsed bad, was in and out of, really like in and out of treatment centers. You were running and gunning at that time through treatment, right? Like you went to a treatment center that, they swore too much there, so that didn't work for you, right?
Yeah.
They were holier than thou for
The guy
you.
who holds the record for swearing on my podcast left a treatment center because they swore?
It was God's treatment center, too. Sorry, Brian Heaton.
So again, I'm in this position where I now understand a little bit more of what's going on. Things have clicked a little bit more. I hate this guy for what he's doing to my mom. My brother is now trying to step in and be a father figure, and that shift of that dynamic wasn't reciprocated, right? I didn't respect him. He's my brother, not my dad.
Yeah.
He had to do a lot of the fatherly duties. I mean, we had a family dog that he had to hold while the dog passed away because we didn't have the financial means to take care of the dog, and he was nowhere to be found. So this returned missionary is sitting there having, cursing every name in the book at him for making him be in this position to take care of this dog. And we wake up the next morning and the dog not be there.
Hey, on that, it's interesting as we talked about this. These are stuff that doesn't get. It's rare that it gets brought up in the recovery process. Those are things nobody ever thought about. Whoever thought my son would be sitting holding a dying dog and not feeling bad about the dog, but feeling angry that he's doing what a dad should be doing and is not because he's out running and gunning in jail.
Right.
We never talk about that stuff.
Yeah.
But that happens so often, right? Where the
Parentification.
Parentification
Yep.
for sure. And that resentment builds because dad or mom, whoever it is, they're not here. They should be doing their job. And I'm having to step in and do it. And like you said, the younger siblings were kind of resentful of the older brother who's trying to take. So, I mean, it was shifting the family dynamic, creating a lot of, I guess, unexpected tension and chaos in the family.
Yeah, it was, chaotic as it seemed, it was real. So after school, my mom still was working, so she asked that we do an extracurricular activity after school. And we lived in walking distance of an elementary school. So I was in middle school at the time, 9th grade, and I got a job as a sweeper at the elementary school just across the way. So after I finished school, I would go and do my after-school job till about 5, and then Mom would be home, and we would start our evening routine. Well, one day Mom says, I'm going to come get you after work today, and I have a surprise for you. Now, mind you, my mom's surprises, they're not real cool
Right.
surprises.
That's when you ended up in Salt Lake County Jail.
Yeah. So this one, we end up going up the Little Cottonwood Canyon, and I'm thinking, well, there's no golf course this way. There's no mall this way. Where are we going? And we turned down this long driveway to a gated area, and it's the treatment center that he's at. And I just turned to my mom and I was like, there's no way I'm going in there. And there were very much more choice words. I think this was the first time I
swore in front of your mom?
Swore and used real profanity, if you will. And I was like, I'm not doing it. My sister's in the back seat bawling her eyes out. And my mom's, putting on her emotional act, come on, let's go do this. We're going to do this as a family. I don't know why I got out of the car, but I did, and walked down to this room where there was clients sitting on one side, family members sitting on the other side, and a process going on in the middle with a clinician. We just go to the very back row, and I put my head down because I'm like, I don't want to be here. This is bull crap. And I look up just out of curiosity to see what's going on in front of me, and between the process, I see Christian with his smirk on his face, the usual smirk he has. And I just smiled but put my head back down because remember, I'm trying to stay mad at him. Mm-hmm. I'm not trying to let this guy use his manipulation, this nice guy act to get back into the life. Well, the clinician finished up the process and said, Christian, are those your daughters back there? Let's get your daughters up here. And my sister starts crying again. And then he describes it as like a spring on a trampoline. Like I jumped out of my chair and ran up there.
No, it was a cannonball coming out of a cannon. When they got invited, her younger sister went, no, she shrunk down in her chair. She wasn't having anything to do with it. This little yahoo, it was like a cannonball being fired out of a cannon. She was out of that chair. I'm on. Let's do this, whatever this is.
So what was this?
It was the first time that I was asked how his addiction has affected me.
Get the detail a little more. How did it look?
It was knee to knee, hand to hand, and he's just sitting there with a smirk on his face. And I, for the first time, relinquished all of the secrets he had asked me to keep. That was the first time my mom had heard about the pain medications, about me being checked out of school.
Going through family members' medicine cabinets.
That was the first time it had all surfaced. And I think I spoke for like 20 minutes straight without you getting a word in there. And I began to see genuine tears roll down his face for the first time ever.
So the smirk had turned to tears.
Yep. And the therapist, Christian, you don't get to talk now. You don't get to talk now. And I remember distinctly before he actually was even allowed to respond back. Again, this fun-loving guy who puts on this front that I don't hurt anyone, that I'm this party guy. Therapist asked the clients that he's been in-house with some time, what do you think of Christian now, hearing that this is the true story behind it? And they were all negative aspects to things. And it was finally we were painting this picture of this guy is not the guy you all thought he was. This is my dad, the addict, the alcoholic, the one that has hurt me time and time and time again. And I think that was the first time we actually got to begin the healing process.
Yeah. I think the same thing.
Yeah.
Because that's when the light bulb went on. I haven't been inconveniencing them. I've been hurting them. And it was in that moment that I realized that's not what I want to do. It's not who I am. And it was, to this moment, the beginning of the healing. Mm-hmm. She got a chance to get it out honestly. I had an opportunity that I took to hear it for the first time and decided I didn't want to do that anymore. And that was the beginning of our healing, mm-hmm. and including Abby's, and one by one.
Yeah, I definitely think out of the four of us, I was the first to come around for the forgiveness process a bit quicker than others. After that family process, we would go and do game nights with the clients. We would always go up there and do games. I knew what church he would go to. So when he was in rehab when I had my first homecoming dance, right? And in Utah, and you go to church still, you wear your you wear the dress the next day to church, right?
Oh, I didn't know that. That's a thing?
That's a thing.
That's a thing.
Okay.
Yeah, you wear your what you wore to homecoming to the dance to church the next day to show it off, right?
I'm pretty sure my daughter didn't.
So I did. I went to the church that he went to, and I remember wearing my homecoming dress and, being able to have that moment with him because he wasn't there that night that I was bid off to my first dance or whatever, right? So as things kind of went on, I did come around for the forgiveness. Did I leave my wallet out with money in it still? No, that was hidden somewhere. I made sure all of those valuable assets to me were hidden. Because there were a lot of things that I would go to get and they wouldn't be there. We got a scooter for Christmas one year in the later of his addiction that he ended up being pawned, right? And then we couldn't ever get it back because we didn't know how long it had been pawned for and such of that. So I started to come around, my sister started to come around. My oldest brother was present but wasn't really in this I'm ready to forgive you limbo state, but he was there. But my second oldest brother was like, I don't want anything to do with this guy. He's a dirtbag, nothing.
He's the son whose money I stole that was intended to go to a car.
Oh.
Yeah.
So, and they lived under the same roof for a minute there. And then the pivotal moment for me, this was the point where it was like, it was too good to be true. And it was when he asked me to borrow the keys to my car. And growing up, the deal was if I worked hard and I made money, my parents would match half of the money for the car so we could get a decent car. And I did that. Got myself a 2000 Honda Civic. It was a cute little first car. And he asked, can I borrow your car to go and get some things taken care of? That's, mom has asked me to do, which was to get his license reinstated. And he had to go get some of the documentation to do that. Do you want to share this point? No?
Are you good?
Anyways, he was given a check because my mom, at this point, he has really messed with the funds of their accounts. So he was on an allowance himself. So my mom, did the research, found out exactly how much it was for him to get his license back, wrote him the check. He took the keys and he was gone for 4 days, 5 days? I don't remember.
No, 10 days.
It was 10 days? Wow.
This
okay.
is coming to the end of the whole deal, but so I just got out of treatment. Kelly's got this expectation of, hey, you got to get a job. And to get a job, you got to have a driver's license. And I was driving without one. So I had the $40, go to the DMV. They said, I don't need your $40, but I need you to go down to the courthouse and have them sign off some driving privilege deal that the legal system had. And I remember smiling. And at this point, I'm 4 or 6 days out of residential. Mm-hmm. And I smiled to the lady, but immediately when she said that, my stress just went straight to the top. Like, oh, hell. The last time I went to court, they kept me for a long, long time. And so I get in the car, and the brain of monkeys and the committee of monkeys in my brain held a meeting. You got $40. Your stress is pretty high. And so I just decided rather than go to the courthouse, I would go get high, go buy some crack cocaine downtown, and then go to the courthouse. Well, as that has often not worked out very well, that turned into be 10 days. And you tell them how I funded it?
With selling my car.
Whoa.
He wrote the bill of sale on a napkin, and it was not anywhere near what I paid for that car. It was a couple $100, if that. And the way it was, I think we found out that it was recovered when we decided we would report the car stolen, one, because it wasn't in his name. It was in my mom's name. And it's been 10 days.
And you hadn't heard from me. Nobody
Yeah.
had heard from me. I was off the grid. Just did a silly crack house out in the North Salt Lake West Side. So they were worried a little bit. Where is he? What's going on? And then find the car. Go ahead.
So we found the car and we got it back because, again, I worked hard for this car. I wasn't just going to give it away like it was, what he did. Got the car back, and then things started to take another turn because he was gone for 10 days. We're back to this place of, okay, well, here we go again. Like, there is no hope. There is no change in this. Like, why do I keep doing this repetitiveness with him? And then that was the day that his therapist reached out to him and, said some words that made a difference for him. And then he never picked up then. He checked himself back into treatment, was there for another 30 days. And then that was the true beginning of him coming home and things rebuilding. And I did forgive him quickly again. And I did give into that idea of we can have a trusting relationship. I remember the first time I actually left the wallet out, I did one of these, grabbed it and quickly, looked through, made sure I have all my monies, my cards, everything was good there. Shortly after he got home, I had to have surgery on my hand, and that freaked me out because they were giving me,
Pain pills.
yeah, and it really freaked me out. I was freaking out because I was home and he was home. How is this gonna work? And I think I was 17, yeah, 17 years old because I broke it in high school playing golf. Long story on that, right? But I had the surgery, came home, and my mom gave me 1 or 2 pills, and then I said I didn't need it anymore, and she hid it, thinking, there would be a time where you're going to need it again when you're in this recovery thing, and I didn't, but we were hiding things from him, right? And I remember that the surgery healed, everything was fine, great with it all, and then I was back in the ER a year or two later with pleurisy. The lining of my lungs was inflamed, and it was feeling as if someone was stabbing me. And I remember I'm calling him. I'm 18 years old, scared. This is my first adult experience, right? And I'm calling him like, I need some help here. Don't know what to do. And I remember the ER doctor coming in and said, well, let me give you something for the pain. And I just said, no, I don't need anything for the pain. I'm good. I don't want to do that. And I just remember him sitting on my bedside with tears in his eyes saying, it's okay. You can take it. If it hurts, take it. It's okay. And in my mind, like everything of those days, it always scares me because I don't want to go back down the road we went down. And since then, things have, been a lot different. Trust definitely came into play years later in the fact that he's my best friend. I'll leave my wallet out. He took the keys to my brand new car, my dream car I ever got. And I remember him saying, hey, I'm going to go around to the store. Can I take your car? And I was like, maybe. Where are you going? When will you be back? Okay, that's fine. And I remember when he got back, I went and looked around the car and make sure there were no dings or whatnot. And I mean, honestly, I trust him now, and we're 12 years? 12?
Almost 13.
Almost 13 years, and I trust him more than with anything. I've got 2 beautiful kids who I have needed his help in watching them, and he has dropped everything he is doing, and he comes right over. I am a substance use disorder counselor in this field because of him. There's no doubt about it.
So that's what you do for a profession now.
Correct. Yeah.
What did you want to do before?
I wanted to be a politician. I have no idea why. I think I was you asked my parents, I was the most difficult child. I always had a rebuttal. I was always playing lawyer. And
He's showing us a tattoo.
yeah.
A rebellion.
A rebellion.
Yeah, so when he had a few years of sobriety under his belt, I did go and get my first tattoo, and I remember calling him because he's still my best friend, being like, hey, I'm going to get a tattoo. What do you think about it? And he shares that his thought process was, if I say yes to her, I'm in trouble with her mom. If I say no to her, I'm in trouble with her. And one of his things is he likes to be liked by people. He doesn't like conflict. And so he didn't give me an answer. So I just went and did it. And it was like 4th of July. I was in a long sleeve shirt. I had my wrist bandaged up from it. And I reached across to get some potatoes or something. And he saw the bandage, went and sat down. And he comes over and,
I remember that day. And I said, hey, did you get the tattoo? And she, no, I didn't get the tattoo. And so I said, okay, are you suicidal? And she goes, what are you talking about? Well, I say you got a bandage. You've been cutting. Are you suicidal? And I remember she kind of looked left and looked right, and she said, I got that tattoo. And at this point, I'm past judging and shame, way past. Plus, she's 18 plus. So I said, show it to me. And she unwraps the bandage, and she shows me, can you see it? A little about
anchor?
The size of your thumb, anchor. And I remember asking her, tell me about it. Didn't know while I'm asking her this that her older brother sneaks up behind us and is hearing this. I said, tell me, why the anchor? And I remember she said, well, Dad, I've had a tough life with your stuff and her own personal stuff, a marriage that didn't work out. And she said, but there's always been an anchor in my life to keep me afloat. At that point, her older brother comes in and goes, are you an idiot? Anchors don't float. They go right to the bottom. I remember going, dude, this ain't coming off. Let it go. Let it go. But it has. It's changed.
my share of stupidity moments. And I've called him because I didn't want to call anyone else. And I would call him to bail me out of things. And he's been there. And we don't offer any judgment or shame in our family. We also are very open and we talk about our feelings, right? We don't avoid. If someone walks in and they're pissed off, we'll address, what's going on, right? And people say now that our dynamic has shifted and that, we are a healthy family. We are a very sarcastic family. We speak humor. And sometimes, people are like, whoa, what's wrong with these people? And we're like, trust us, we're good here. But yeah, I'm a substance use disorder counselor because of him. I wanted to be a politician, and then as he got deeper into his sobriety and I started getting involved in the recovery community, playing sober softball, when he started his career in the recovery community, I remember going to work with him and being in on groups and hearing, people's lives and everything that has gone through and what they've been through and hearing the changes they're here to make and all of those efforts that they're trying to do something to change their life. And I just looked at him and I was like, I want to be a therapist. I want to be a Jason Webb. Because that was his therapist that really changed and flipped the script for us in our family. And I was like, I'm going to do it. And, a lot of people go to college for a long time and we're still going there, but
They're called doctors, typically.
nowhere near there, but
You going to get your master's?
I plan to get my master's. Definitely, it's in the picture. Being a Sud C has given me an opportunity to really dabble in. Is this really what I want to put a lot of my investment and my time and my future into it?
For those who don't know, what's a SUDC?
Substance use disorder counselor. Yep, and it is 100%. I love it. I have been working as a counselor for 3 years now. I am very fortunate, and I've been waiting a long time to actually say I get to work with Christian. We work at Wasatch together, so it's actually really cool to be able to work with my dad and him be sober and be present. It's funny. We're so open now with our story that we share it in light that people can hear it and know that there is hope. Right? Mm-hmm. We're not the perfect story. We're not the perfect storm. We also know that, ours is maybe one of a few that actually works out. But if anything, we offer hope to people that don't have that hope, that we can be that support person for you because we believe in second chances. We've given this guy a plethora of them. And, we always talk about that process of trust is a risk, but it was a risk we were willing to take. And it took us getting to a position of doing so and doing that.
Wow. This has probably been one of my most favorite podcasts.
Oh, for sure.
I just love their dynamic. I love their interaction. I'm asking you a loaded question. You don't have to answer it.
Okay.
Would you say your father's addiction has been a blessing or a curse to your family?
100% it's been a blessing. I don't wish addiction or alcoholism on anyone. I don't even wish it upon my worst enemy. However, for me and our family, it has been the greatest blessing we have ever done together. There was a time where, honestly, when he was in the midst of the addiction, we didn't know where he was at. My brothers were very estranged from us. I had brothers move out and in and out. And I, for a time, did not think my family was ever going to be unified. I thought this is going to be what it is. I thought my parents were going to get divorced. Right? And I really didn't know much about the divorce life other than I get 2 Christmases, right? Mm-hmm. But to my surprise, this worked out for us. And I would not change anything. I would not change the bonding that I claimed we had for anything. I wouldn't. Because it has brought him and I closer than we've ever been. We've learned about honesty. We've learned about, being completely judgment-free. We've learned so much about service and giving to others and being a confidant to those that don't have it, right? And I think the biggest thing is I think just the other day, actually, it was kind of funny. I was at the grocery store with my kids, just getting groceries, and I had someone that just kept looking at me like, I know you? The look that you get when you, know each other? And so I just smiled and, waved, and they come over and they're like, I hate to say this, but are you related to Christian? And I'm like, depends. My typical response is depends on who's asking.
Does he owe you money?
Yeah, exactly. That is my response. Does he owe you money? If he does, I don't know the guy. She goes, no, I went to a treatment center he worked at. He saved my life. And we just kind of started talking, and I was just like, can I tell him I saw you? I mean, is this like, are you doing well? You look well. And she goes, he truly saved my life. There are so many times where I hear this guy who I thought was, man, I hated. And I hear so many times how many times he has saved people's lives. And to me, that is like my hero. My hero right here is him. Because he's in this world and still in this world because he has a huge heart. And he continues to give back to the community. And because of that, he is a reason why I'm here in the position I am a Sudsies, because I see how much of a huge heart he has and how he continually gives back to this community by saving people's lives. Because this disease of addiction, it is truly life or death for a lot of people. And this guy always answers his phone. And no matter who it is, what it is, and I will, he'll excuse himself to the other room, and I can just hear on the other side of the door how he is trying so hard to help them get to a place where he can go get them. I mean, there's times where he's gone and gotten people out of places that I'm like, oh, can you not do that? That scares me. But it's him and his huge heart hoping to give people the opportunity that we have, which is to really instill there is hope. That you can have what we have, a family that loves on each other, that we respect one another, that we are there for one another. You can have all of this if you continue to just open the door to what treatment is.
I mean, there's really not much to say. I mean, it's
Well,
such
there's
an
a lot. I hope people are feeling it because I feel it.
I mean, I started tearing up.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's your dad is a rock star in the recovery community.
Yeah.
And I see big things for you. I mean, I really do. You guys are so authentic, so genuine, so lovable, so likable, and so honest. I think that's what the recovery community needs. And I'm lucky to call you both friends. And I think that's amazing.
Thank you.
No, I agree 100%. I am curious, though.
Ooh.
Sure.
How's your relationship with your mom?
Good question. Lately I've been getting that question a lot as we continue to share our story. The question that most often gets asked is, does it hurt my mom's feelings when I call him my best friend? Even though we've been through all of this and she's done all this to reconvene the family.
Well, let's be clear. During this podcast, you've named at least a dozen people that you've called your best friend. So I'm real confused about the best friend thing.
I have a large circle of trust that includes best friends.
Yes.
So my mom and my relationship, she is, again, this dynamic of what we went through with his addiction has opened our eyes to be more open with each other. My mom, I think I talk to my parents an unhealthily amount. I talk to them. My kids FaceTime Christian every morning. If Christian's not answering, we're FaceTiming Grandma. We're always FaceTiming Grandma when the kids wake up from their naps. We are constantly in communication. On the weekends, if he's golfing, I'll call my mom and say, let's go do something. Let's go take the kids to the park, or let's go get lunch. So my mom and mine's relationship is, again, I would consider her my best friend. She was there for the birth of my kids. She's always there for me. She shows me, honestly, what hard work is. I truly believe, has demonstrated forgiveness. Because she talks about how she was ready to serve this guy divorce papers in jail. She was ready to call it quits, and, because she will say, if it comes down to it, she will always choose the kids over him in any given moment if it came down to that, potential thing that could ruin it all for him. And I think for her, showing that she wasn't ready to give up this marriage, that there is still something worth fighting for, and the way she forgave him, and keep funding treatment, right, after time and time again, and kept going. Her family was saying, just leave him. We'll take care of you. We're done. We're here. We need to get help for you and the kids. Let's just leave him behind. And she really just demonstrated truly what forgiveness is to me. So she, honestly, I idolize that woman for staying together with this man. He briefly talked that I have been married twice. I'm on my second marriage. I called my first one a trial marriage. But I stuck around in a marriage I should not have been in for a long time because of a lot of negative self-talk that was, well, my mom stayed married to an addict. I can stay married to this guy. And it wasn't until I went to my mom and that I shared, like, that was my logic. And she broke down, like, I feel like I failed as a mom. And I'm like, no, you didn't. Like, if anything, you taught me to be able to forgive myself for having those thoughts that I can get out of this marriage and now find true happiness. So my mom is an idol to me in that woman is a great example to me of what forgiveness is and how to demonstrate that.
Yeah. Well, what a family, huh, Casey? Like, I want to go to their house on Thanksgiving. I bet that's a
Right?
That is quite the good time. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so grateful for you guys stopping by, and I think this podcast is going to help a lot of people. And I think you said it best: is what you're giving is people hope, and hope is it's a game changer, and letting people know that recovery is possible. And unfortunately, it doesn't work out for everybody,
But it is life and death, and I'm glad you brought that up, Sarah, because sometimes we I think we forget how serious the disease of addiction is, and I'm glad you brought that up and highlighted that, because people do need to take it seriously, and not giving up on each other can, win the day, and life can be the result. So I think your family's a wonderful example of that.
And a big thanks to Wasatch Recovery for letting you guys both off work and coming out here and sharing your story. Project Recovery is what, Dr. Matt?
It's a KSL podcast, Casey.